Thank you for a few minutes. We're going to share a little bit, really, again, great to be here and great to follow some really great speakers too. And we were sitting at our tables saying like, oh yeah, it's like just echoing a lot of the things that have been shared. So really, really great conversation so far. So we are with Kansas Advocacy. We are a statewide advocacy organization dedicated to the belief that Kansans working together can build a more thriving, inclusive, and just Kansas. We work across a couple of campaigns. Brennan and I will share a little bit about the work that we're doing. But we at Kansas Advocacy, though, we do this work through primarily policy advocacy and a lot of research and interaction and stories along those lines, but then also impact litigation when we need to, right? We like the policy realm as a way to enact change, but when that doesn't work, we have this tool of this impact litigation as well to do. My background is social work. I MSW from KU many years ago, but really great to my background in terms of social work, really drawn to the work of, I didn't know what I wanted to do career-wise, but I just knew we have to be helping each other, right? We have to watch out for each other, and I was drawn to social work for the breadth and the scope of the work that can happen, right? There's a lot of different ways you can practice and interact through policy or schools or education and healthcare and foster care, like, right? All sorts of things that we see a lot of different causes, and so really, really great. At KU, I did the administrative and advocacy practice track, so also really interested in macro level social systems and policy type of work, and that led me to some really formative practicum experiences. And then before I was with Kansas Advocacy, I was with Harvesters, the food bank for this region. So again, I share all that really just to show, like, your social work journey and career could look a lot of different ways to me. When I was at Harvesters, it was direct service and supporting food pantries and the USDA commodity programs and produce distributions and food as medicine work, right? So programmatic and program design. But then now to this focus now with Kansas Advocacy, that's a little bit more, still a good amount of community work in my role, but then also looking at the policy realm as well. I'll share with Brennan now to share her background.
Yes, so my name is Brennan Zosky. Thank you again for having us. One is taking pictures, which doesn't make me nervous at all. On that note, I also got my MSW from KU. I was taught by Melinda. My years since is a little bit less than Jessica's. I graduated in 2021. My path since getting my master's has also not been as consistent as I would say Jessica's was. She's been in food access pretty securely. I graduated, I did my practicum in my second year with Kansas Advocacy, but after I graduated, I worked in human trafficking for a little bit, and then I worked in suicide prevention before coming to the space. My joke is always that it's because I like to keep it light. So, yeah. But what I will say is that all of that work that I did was still social work, so it still set me up to do this job, which, as you've heard from a lot of speakers today, social work in and of itself really just, it gets you prepared to do this kind of work. So I really had a leg up in that way, which I very much appreciate. I think that's it. I think that's all I have.
Great. I'm gonna, thanks. We're doing our best this morning, friends. I'm gonna share a little bit, as I mentioned, I work on our Thriving campaign, which is where we focus on our food access and anti-hunger work. So I'm gonna share a few bills that we've been watching, specific to our food work, and then we're gonna toss it back and forth this morning, so hopefully we can keep things moving and tie this all together for you all. So I actually have good news to start with, which doesn't always happen in our world and in the policy realm these days. So I have 3 bills to highlight around the food access work that we've been watching. When I talk about Kansas Advocacy doing policy advocacy, and the bills that we'll talk about here, it looks like we are submitting testimony or we are showing up to testify. Brennan and our colleagues are at the State House almost daily when session is taking place, speaking up, working with members directly or behind the scenes, or proposing bill language and amendment language, and building those relationships that we talked about, but then also working with stakeholders and partners along the way. So a couple bills that I will highlight. There's one, the first one I'll share. again, good news that doesn't always happen. Senate Bill 438. This one is a bill that would encourage more Kansas schools to use the community eligibility provision. So this CEP, this is a provision within the National School Lunch Program that any school with that's a high poverty, high need area, with 25% or more students who are utilizing SNAP or Medicaid or TANF. I see some nods, so I'm always glad when folks know the school nutrition programs. But 25%, so 1 in 4 kids out there in that school district, they're eligible to do the community eligibility provision, which means every student gets breakfast and lunch for free, regardless of their ability to pay. So, and we see this across the board that participation goes up when every meal is free. We saw it work really well during COVID. The stigma has gone right. You remember school cafeterias, like kids are pretty savvy and they know who's eating, who might be, who might have to have a different meal, right? So this would really support existing processes and programs to enable community eligibility, which would increase access for students across districts. This one, there is a way that the districts could opt out if they were not feasibly able to make that happen financially because of the way the reimbursements work, but ultimately it supports the CEP adoption. So why this matters to you all, a lot of families that you might work with may have kids that are in qualifying schools who aren't currently getting those free meals, and we know what free meals at school lunch is pretty critical. It's just as critical as any other education, a laptop or a tablet or a textbook or a desk, right, is just as critical. If all of the education investments really aren't going to work and aren't going to be maximized without nutrition, right? If our kids are hungry, we can't learn. So a lot of the students that you might be working with might be in schools that are qualified but not opting in. So community eligibility removes a lot of those barriers around applying for free lunches or any of the paperwork barriers in the administration, and it frees up some admin time for the school districts as well. So that's good news, and always nice when we can support a positive bill. So that one is passed the Senate Education Committee on Monday, so it's moving through that process. There's another school meals bill that we're watching. This one is getting better. It's not good news just yet, but we are watching it pretty closely. This was Senate Bill 387. It passed the Senate 22 to 18, so a pretty narrow margin, but it did pass and moved to the House with language that would have made it significantly harder for families and schools to access free meals. Advocates, including Advocacy, and a lot of our partners pushed back, and we had some meaningful wins on this one so far. So that original bill would require schools to verify household income for every student applying for free lunches, which is debatable. It's not really even possible within the federal guidelines, so that to be able that would even go next. That part's pretty problematic. But that would increase lots of admin and staff time for school districts without any state money to support that and cover those costs. It also would require legislative approval for any school to opt into that community eligibility provision. That again, which would allow every school the schools to provide free lunches. That should be a local district decision, and that's how the program is set, and that's what USDA and state says. So again, problematic at least, but to have it written within a bill that really politicians could block a school from doing free lunches. There was an amendment that was added that eliminated the reduced price copay, so the students who qualify for the reduced price, that those costs would be covered, and so they would essentially be getting those meals for free. So that's good news within this troublesome bill. That's good news, at least, that amendment stayed in. So just recently, this was worked in a committee, and the CEP restriction language was removed, so that's good news. That was, again, really good work from a lot of advocates in schools speaking up about this and the impact of school lunches. So that was removed from the House Education yesterday, so that's big. The income verification is still in play, which again, still troublesome, but there's still some work to do with that bill moving through how it's moving through the process, but we're hopeful that the reduced price copay stays in as well. The last one I'll share about is more broadly around SNAP and food access and really public assistance in general. This is Senate Bill 363. It's a really broad public assistance bill. We've been calling this at Advocacy, we've been calling this like the Kansas version of HR 1. If you've been following HR 1 is, you've probably heard Big Beautiful Bill. That's what is happening. And so there's some things that they're trying to codify within Kansas as well that would really tighten eligibility and add bureaucratic hurdles across SNAP, Medicaid, and TANF. So here's what it would do. It would require data matching to verify eligibility for food and medical assistance, prohibit self-attestation for determining eligibility, and limit retroactive Medicaid enrollment, and codify some of the most onerous pieces of the federally, so-called big beautiful bill. So this is one where we see at the federal level, we've seen some of those harmful impacts already from HR 1 coming through, and more will come through. There's how the timelines are stacked for some of those things that are happening with SNAP and Medicaid, folks losing their benefits or having more hurdles to jump through. So folks are already feeling it at the federal level, but then the state is also now trying to do some things. So families are really getting squeezed by federal and state level here on this type of thing. So this bill was passed out of the Senate. It has a hearing in House Bill 401 this Thursday. So this is a big one. It kind of has a lot of different public assistance pieces. So this is a really good one. If you're able to speak up with your lawmakers, this is a good one to do so.
Great, yes. So something I did not mention earlier is that I am with Kansas Advocacy, I'm a campaign director, and the campaign that I lead is our adult justice, youth justice, and our child welfare work. So now that I've mentioned that, you all may be like, okay, well, this is about food insecurity, so why is this lady up here talking with Jessica? Why is Jessica just doing this on her own? And the answer to that is because, as you've heard from other speakers, all of this stuff is very interconnected, right? All of these things are going to impact one another. Some of you, either from your own lived experience, work you've done, the education you've gotten thus far, you may have heard about silos, right? How much we're struggling with silos. And in systems, this is 100% true, that our silos, our systems, our state agencies don't do a great job of communicating and collaborating with each other. That said, the world does not reflect those silos. Things do not fit neatly into those same boxes, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, depending on how you're looking at it. So we know that when folks are experiencing poverty, there is a deep connection between that, food insecurity, and then system involvement. So when we see cuts to social safety nets, people fall into situations where they're being made to make impossible choices, right? And that can often lead into justice system involvement. Similarly, we know that issues of poverty are really deeply intertwined with the child welfare system in particular. The state has been having a really great conversation about neglect versus poverty. There was some legislation that was introduced last year that unfortunately didn't end up making it through with that language, but it's a conversation we're having, right? Which is really important, is disconnecting, starting to untangle the connections between poverty and neglect, right? And so as we're having this ongoing conversation, it's really important that whether or not you see yourself as a macro level social worker, or if you want to be an advocate in a different way than going and speaking to your legislators, obviously because all of you are here, I'm assuming that's something but for your fellow classmates, what I would encourage you to encourage them to do is to find the opportunities within their own work to unravel those things as social workers. So how can we recognize how these issues are interconnected, and how can we, even in a direct service capacity, be somebody who's going to step up, ask questions, try to figure out why that's happening and how we can disrupt that. With the justice system specifically, we also have some really concerning policies in place right now that directly connect food insecurity and the justice system. And that's because Kansas has a drug felony conviction ban. So if you have one drug felony conviction, you have to prove sobriety to access SNAP and jump through more hoops after you have left incarceration. And you have to pay for those drug tests yourself. So that's also carving into the amount of money you're going to get from SNAP. Then, if you have a second drug felony conviction, you are just fully unable to access SNAP anymore. So these are really tangible things that connect food insecurity and the justice system and the child welfare system, which is why I'm also here talking to you guys today.
Just one final point, and then we are on our way for sure. So what do we do with all this, right? So really thinking, again, we've heard this and echoed with a lot of folks already of like building power of your stories matter, you're experts. I remember sitting in your chairs. You don't always feel like the expert, but you are. You know a lot. The lawmakers are tasked with working through a lot of different things, and a lot of different priorities come through. So trust your expertise for sure, and know that they need to hear your stories. And we've heard from elected officials directly, like stories matter, stats matter, and the data that matters, but people have said like we've changed the way we voted because we've heard stories from community members and things that you care about and people you stand with. So that is really critical. So in terms of building power, of course, Ken Appleseed, follow along with us if you'd like. We have weekly updates that come out with some calls to action if you're interested in some of the things that we are doing. But you also like look around on the things that you care about. I'm sure there's work that's happening. There's coalitions that you could join, you could lead, right? There's a lot of things that you could do. There's great opportunities, like today if you're interacting with folks at the state level. I just got back from DC interacting with the federal delegation on some of these same things, right? So there's different ways. But also don't underestimate the like hyper local level too, right? School boards, city council, county folks, right? Don't underestimate some of those types of pieces too. The 3 lunches that I was talking about, a lot of those things come down to school board conversations. So that's a board in your community, 7 members on that board that vote around things like kids should eat for free or a lot of the other things that are working through. So don't underestimate that as well. So the last thing I would say, and then maybe we would turn back to Brennan for one last point is, as we've heard today, and as you already know, all of this is interconnected. And so find what you care about and see that and think about it in terms of the overall family ecosystem, but then also a system ecosystem, right? I work in food access, and I can't do much with food without bumping up pretty quick on things like healthcare and housing and all these other basic needs and SNAP, and that's some of the federal programs, but also it's happening statewide. But then, farmers and producers and the whole food system, and then let alone all these other pieces that come into some of these basic needs that, again, the causes that you all work with and stand for. So absolutely get involved and be encouraged to build that own power within your communities, and remember that as a holistic approach.
Yeah, I think Jessica about summed it up. I think the only thing that I would have to add is we always need to remember that being a social worker really is often inherently political, whether you're in the macro space or the direct service space or somewhere in between, because we're all agreeing to abide by the same ethical principles and uphold the same ethical responsibilities in society. What that looks like to you as an individual is up to you to decide. Again, find where your passion lies, what you really care about, but also try to be really thoughtful about how the thing you really care about may connect to other things, so that you can also be uplifting other people in what they're working on. And I would be remiss if I didn't end this on the final point, which is this is really important that we do this, and also it's really, really important that you take care of yourselves while we're doing it too. So.
I think I'm seeing Robin, and I think people are coming forward. The student, while everybody's coming forward, I want to reiterate that take care of yourself part. And it's ironic, I guess I'm saying this as students are coming forward and do this work. So for myself, and I'm just going to say, and I can see a bunch of students, I can see a bunch of students sitting over there that I have. My take care of yourself part, they have no idea, and I don't know about other faculty. My take care of myself part comes from a big part of my students. And I want to give that shout out, and I'm sure I'm not the only faculty member who feels this way. But the stories, the engagement, the things you do in the classroom, we go home and go, I can do this another day. So while you're sitting here today in community with each other, this is also taking care of each other. Because sitting in a room of people who will listen to you and are like-minded feeds your heart, right? So it can feel very engaging. So I just kind of wanted to do that as an introduction because I'm really excited about this opportunity for students to share how they're doing advocacy work. And I'm going to start at like the last panel, if you don't mind introducing yourself and a little bit of how this got started. Because I think sometimes when you're doing everything in life and in school and everything, it can feel very overwhelming. So I'm sure there's lots of questions out there. Again, you can write it down. We will get to as many as we can. And I actually won't speak if we will take that time so we can make sure to get this part done. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Lydia Czar. I'm a senior at Pittsburgh State University getting my bachelor's in political science and social work. I should be attending law school here in August. Party. Started working on local campaigns. People, helped a couple campaigns running against Chuck Smith in Kansas, in my district. And from there, I got involved in social work. It wasn't originally my major. And I just got involved in more clubs. I was working on more political campaigns, and then I started getting involved with the legislature. I did a few fellowships with Loudlight, if anyone's familiar. I know they're on every campus. So I did a couple fellowships with them, and I just got involved working with my legislatures and with my fellow constituents. So I think my classmates know me as the person who's just always listening to the legislature. I'm always listening to the hearings in the House and Senate when they're in session on their live streams. They say some crazy stuff. I highly recommend listening in on those. And yeah, so my classmates just know me as the person to go to when it comes to any questions with the legislature, because I'm just always listening to them. I'm writing letters to my legislature. I am harassing them in any way I can, because that is the work that we have to do as social workers. I think it comes down straight to just harassing some people to get them to do what we want them to do sometimes. So.
Hello, my name is Robin Monroe, and I will graduate this May with my master's in social work. And I'm just really honored to represent Wichita State University School of Social Work, the faculty, and my fantastic supportive cohort. I started in advocacy work, I'm going to tell on myself. The first person I ever knocked doors for was Dan Glickman, so I'm a little bit older than the rest of you, maybe. But I am system affected, I should say systems affected. I am formally incarcerated. I have felony convictions, and I am graduating in May with something years old, I went to the Marcus Welcome Center and enrolled as an undergraduate in social work, and decided I have something to say, and I'm going to say it. And I need to know better how to say it. One of my shining moments is being blocked by Roger Marshall on Twitter. I think I might need to polish my communication skills. But one of the things I like to make a point about being systems affected is because I've lived in poverty, I've been homeless, I've lost my children to the system, I have gotten them back, and now I've raised 2 grandchildren that were lost to the system. I have touched these systems and these policies personally. So when I critique a policy or when I want to look at a system more critically, these are all things that I myself have personally navigated. And it is not just what I want to do as a professional, and it's something that I feel and I take very personally. When Melinda shared the story of the outlet mall, so I take these things extremely personally, and I dedicate myself to these efforts. Right now, my focus in policy is on the many voter suppression bills that are being forced through the House. Right now, they're doing all kind of squirrely procedural things, and in fact, it was to the point where I couldn't keep up. I was checking twice a day, and these bills were moving around so fast I couldn't really keep up. So I decided I would concentrate and funnel all of that into more, let's just look at what they're doing and how these things interact. And today, in the Kansas Reflector, I have an editorial published that kind of describes what I found. Shameless plug. And so if I were to advocate for one bill, it was introduced in January of 2025, it's not dead yet, by Representative Stephanie Sawyer-Clayton, and it's House Bill 2091, and it is increases access to voting, both for felons, and for high school seniors. If you are 17, you can get registered to vote if you're going to be 18 by the next election cycle. So what this does, it does not change access to voting and the laws surrounding who is an eligible voter. What it does is make the process more accessible. In regard to felons, what it does is give you a piece of paper at the time you're signing off on all of your discharge summary, you've completed your sentence. Now you're registered to vote as well. Because your rights are already restored, but you don't know that. They don't go out of their way to tell you that. And I think the thing is that, you know, democracy works best when everyone participates. It does. And so instead of making it more difficult, we need to make it more accessible. And so I feel like all of the individual issues that are all so important, food access, education, all of the things we've heard of today, all of that rests on our vote. And we absolutely need to participate and encourage others to participate.
Hello, my name is Grace Yoda. I am a Washburn student and junior in the DSW program. I'm also the secretary for URGE, which stands for Unite for Reproductive and Gender Equity. I am fairly new. Well, I wouldn't say I'm fairly new. I've always been involved in advocacy work. In high school, I organized a protest against rapists that was at our school. And I've always been going to protests, but I think more at the professional level, I just started getting into advocacy work with URGE. I was a general member for a while. I was really interested in it, and then I became a exec member as a secretary. And we went to the Capitol 2 weeks ago now, I think, and we advocated for House Bill 273, Senate Bill 107, Senate Bill 389, which would be taking the sales tax off period products and diapers. We also advocated for House Bill 2067, which would be establishing a period product grant program and grant fund to award monies to qualifying Title I schools and provide period products to students. The work that I do pertains to gender equity and reproductive justice. It's been super awesome having a community on campus to work with and kind of teach me how to do that advocacy work. I will say it can be very intimidating at times, especially as somebody who's new to it, but I have great supports here on campus, and I would just like to say I'm so honored to be up here today representing URGE and Washburn and speaking with all of these really amazing speakers today, so thank you for having me.
And I want to reiterate, thank you all for taking the time to do this. I know it can be intimidating. So again, I have questions, but is there ones, I'm already seeing some cards go up, and we had so many questions last time that I don't want to necessarily take up time. So we have Lisa picking them up, or you can bring them to me if you want. You don't have to, I see. It's up to you if you want to come forward, or there's a card right here. Thank you. Okay. Oh, I like that too. What mark are you trying to leave behind for the future? Again, just starting out light.
That's an easy question. It's a short answer question. I would say the marker I'm trying to leave on just the world in general is one where other people feel that they can follow my footsteps. I'm always encouraging people, to get involved in politics and in the legislature, and I know people get annoyed with me how much I talk about it. But it is very very simple, like, everybody in this room should be registered to vote, I'm just gonna say that. And if you're not registered to vote, then I highly recommend that you figure out how to do that. But making sure that other people are knowledgeable enough to participate in the way that I participate, so that when I'm gone, when I'm not here doing this work, when I retire, I don't know, maybe I'll never retire. But when my work is done, hopefully there will be other people behind me to take my place, and who have the knowledge and the courage to actually stand up for what they believe in, and be a social worker, which I think everybody should be a social worker, but that's just me. It's just a good career, I think. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Someone in here is not registered to vote, I'm happy to help you with that. And that was a great point. And so I want my mark on the world to be something that you don't know is even there. That people coming in just don't have to fight these fights anymore. You know, if you get into trouble and you have a problem, you pay your debt to society as it is, and then you live your life. You're open to housing, you're open to education, your children are restored, your families are restored, you get to eat, as I'm hearing from Kansas Advocacy today. Things like that. I just feel like if people don't have to concern themselves so much with navigating systems, then they'll be fine.
I think the mark that I want to leave is that anybody can do this work. It doesn't have, you don't have to be speaking directly to your legislators. There's other ways to advocate for these things. And whether that's, voting or, wearing a shirt that says that you're in support of something. It is simple. You can do these things. But I also want to work towards, equal access to hygiene products or just things in general like healthcare, again, for everyone. I want people to have equal access to things, and that's the work that I would like to leave. It's a big one, but.
What challenges did you face when you started in advocacy, and how did you overcome those challenges?
I think that the biggest challenge I had to overcome was being listened to and finding my voice. It's very easy to be very nervous talking in front of like 200 people. Not a lot of people would be willing to do that, and that's not something I was willing to do a few years ago. But it's taken me like a lot of practice and a lot of experience, and a lot of failures. But getting people to listen to me, especially as like just a young girl, right? People are like, oh, she's just 22 years old, like what do you know? But like I have a political science degree, like I kind of know a lot about this stuff. So getting people to listen to me, especially like the 60, 70-year-old men that we have in the legislature that are like, oh, she's just like some college girl, or she's like, you hear a lot, like just a social worker, just a college student, just an intern, whatever. But yeah, I would say my biggest challenge has been like finding my voice and making people listen to me, and pulling up my own chair at the table, because there's not necessarily a seat for me at the table. So.
Well, at 58, they don't listen to you either, if that's any. But I think for me, we've all seen that meanness. I don't know how to tell you to care about other people. I don't know how to teach someone empathy. I don't know how to, when they're passing these bills that directly affect the most vulnerable in our state, I don't know how to say, what do you even, so it's for me, it's digging deep for that one place on the Venn diagram that we intersect. And sometimes I can, and sometimes I just have to know when to say when I walk away. So
qualified than me, I don't know enough, but I really, have started coming to the terms with it. I am qualified enough to do this work. I can do this. I'm smart enough. I know things. Like, I think it's really hard to be so young doing this work when there are people who have way more experience than you, know more things than you, but I've taken that and have looked at it as an opportunity to learn more now from people around me. But yes, it can be very intimidating. It can be very intimidating. So just kind of overcoming that imposter syndrome, which I haven't completely overcome it yet, but we're taking steps to do so. So, yeah.
So I don't see cards. Does anybody need the microphone? They have a question? You want to raise your hand? Okay, then I will add the one that I'll add some of the ones I've been asked. The first one was, since you are here as a student panel, you're students and you have other things, and so this will get a chuckle in the whole room. How do you do the advocacy work student life balance? Easy one.
I'm going to be real honest and say that I don't balance it. I think like my academic life and my advocacy life and everything is all just tied up into my identity as a social worker, which okay, I can't really call myself a social worker until I have my license. Don't get on me about that. But my classmates know that all the time during class I'm talking about policy, and if I'm not yapping about policy, then I'm yapping about something else. But it's all intertwined for me, right? Like, this is my entire life, is being a social worker, and that's not to say that I don't have a work-life balance, because I do, but making sure that because we know everything is intertwined, right? That my academics is going to touch on my advocacy work, because advocacy looks at access to education, it looks like access to social welfare services and stuff. And that's what my academics are largely tied into, right, as a social worker or social work student. So yeah, I would say that my and advocacy life are really fully intertwined with each other.
I would agree with that. Everything is policy for me as well. And even in my personal life, I'm really not the favorite at any party, because anything is about 2 sentences away to a policy for me. So, not always the most popular chick. So, but I think that it's true, though, So I think my personal life, my academic life, and hopefully my professional life will all rotate around policy, because that's where it's at.
Well, my answer is kind of the same. I don't really have a balance. I either get way into it, or I get so overwhelmed that I pull back. And I think that is a lot of things, a lot of struggles that happen when doing this work. It can be very overwhelming, especially right now in the state of the world. There's a lot of stuff going on that is just overwhelming and hard to live with. But yeah, I have a tendency to just make it my whole life, or really pull back from it. And I have been getting better about that, but yeah, it's really hard to find a balance. And there's some times where I will be like, oh, this is great. For a 2-week period, I'm like, oh, this is great. I am balancing everything, but then I will just tip one way or the other. But I think that just having the support of other people that you're doing this work with, and staying in communication with them, can help you find a balance more. So you don't feel like you're taking all of that on. That would just be a little bit of advice. If you are struggling with finding a balance, reach out to those around you and talk to them about that, because it can take some of that off your shoulders as well.
I think we have time for one last one. So right there. Do you want the mic, or you can project? Okay.
So with all the things going on in the world right now, all of the changes that are happening, we sometimes easily get discouraged in your work. How do you guys keep your motivation to continue
that's a great question. I've definitely had my ups and downs, right? I've been burnt out when it comes to this work. It's very easy to get burnt out in social work, but I've learned the importance of self-care the past couple of years, which has been great. My life is a lot better after I learned self-care. But I would say it's recognizing that someone has to do this work. And if it's like, if not me, then who, right? So even when it is incredibly difficult for me to do, I have to recognize that someone does have to do the work, right? Someone has to be advocating for the people out there that are choosing between paying rent and paying food, or buying food and paying for medical bills. And so if it's not me, who else is gonna do it? That's really the only thing that keeps me going sometimes. And the fact that I have the education necessary, because not everybody's a social worker, not everybody's able to have a bachelor's in social work. And so I've been blessed enough, to have the opportunities that I do have in my education. So yeah, if not me, then who?
I think it's true that we have to do the work, but we don't have to do all the work. We have ally agencies. I would encourage everyone that's really focused on a certain policy or a certain topic to immediately find your allies in that topic. See what they've done. It's not plagiarism to build on what they have done, to borrow their research, their information, and then kind of focus your site, because they say don't look away, because they're truly a mess, globally, nationally, everywhere. I choose to look at voting rights in the state of Kansas, and that's where I'm gonna pour my energy. Do I get overwhelmed looking at it sometimes, or all of it sometimes? Yes, but then that pulls my energy away from my focus. So I try to stay very focused on the policy I'm working on, and just informed enough to be dangerous on everything else.
Well, I think there are two things that keep me going. One is mainly my community, and how I'm so thankful that I do have other people doing this work with me, who uplift me, who can see when I am getting tired, and encourage me to keep going. So partially I do it for them, because I know that I know they always have my back, but I have theirs as well. I think another thing that keeps me going is the stuff in the world right now affects me personally. This is real stuff that's going on, it affects me. And they have said, who else is gonna do this? Who else is gonna advocate for not only myself, but the other people who are also experiencing these things. But I think that if you are feeling burnout or overwhelmed, again, like Robin was saying, we have allies, we have people that are near us that are wanting the same things as us. You just have to find them, and that can be a feat in itself, is going out there and finding them, but it's so worth it, because when you are burnt out, you have somebody that has your back.
I think knowing who has your back is probably a nice place to end. So again, thank you so much for volunteering to do this. Thank you for all the suggestions. And again, there'll be an evaluation at the end, so share your thoughts about this. And I'm going to bring Felicia Glass forward. So you can follow the agenda, we're skipping right past me, and I'm just going to do the wrap up after Felicia. I think what you were getting from the panel was much more powerful, and now Felicia's going to give us a little bit, and you are, Felicia's actually the ethics chair still for the Kansas, so she should know what she's talking about.
So my name is Felicia Glass. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I have an undergraduate degree from Washburn in social work. If y'all learn how to spell my first name though, Tanya, we're gonna have a problem. All right, they always misspell my first name. I have a master's degree in clinical social work from Tulane University of New Orleans. I know that's right, recognize the power, right? I have been a social worker longer than most of you have been alive. I am a 50 minus 1. I look good, don't I? Right? So social work has been my entire life. I graduated from Washburn when I was 21. And I have been doing this thing ever since. I am honored to sit as the ethics chair. I've been the ethics chair for 4 years, I believe. And as the ethics chair, my responsibilities are, as clinicians or social workers in general, any level of practice, when they have ethical issues, they call BSRB or they call Kansas NASW and they say, hey, I have an ethics question, and none of those people can answer the ethical questions. And so they say, hey, call this person. So I have the pleasure of fielding those ethics questions for licensed clinicians and licensed social workers and helping them find answers when they're unable, so if they're not connected to NASW, the organization, they may not have access to the attorneys that help kind of fill that stuff. So my responsibility that I've taken on for volunteer prices is to help them fill that out, right? So Tanya said, hey, can you come and talk today a little bit about ethics? And here's what I want to say to you. Today, you've heard all the various things about the world that we are living in. And you are experiencing this world as it is. Each of us have various backgrounds of which we come from. I am the daughter of a young lady who gave birth to me when she was 13 years old. I am a success story. I grew up on food stamps. I remember when you had paper little packs of food stamps, little cash dollars, run into the store to buy my mom whatever she needed and couldn't wait until she gave me the 25 cents that was left over so I could buy candy because I grew up in Mississippi, so I could connect with all kinds of candy at business stores, right? I remember the struggle of eating cafeteria food. I remember the struggle of watching my mom pick up commodity boxes, but they had the best cheese. I want to grilled cheese, right? So I don't come from what we would consider to be privilege. I'm also in this new phase of my life. I call it a new phase of my life because it's a whole new chapter for me and my family. I also proudly live in an LGBTQIA+ world. I also happen to wear very beautiful bronze skin all over my body. I happen to be the mother of a set of twins who were born at 24 weeks. And as a result, one of them has severe mental illness issues, right? So she has an IQ of 32, but you would never know it because she works every day and she meets her needs. But I'm a mom who deals with a child who struggles with wanting to end her life. I'm a mom who struggles with a child who picks her feet so bad that she can't walk on them at times. I'm also the big cousin of 2 cousins who have full-blown schizophrenia as a diagnosis. So when I stand in front of you talking about ethics, I'm not telling you what someone else told me. I want you to know that ethically, regardless of where you come from, regardless of the experiences you may have had, I need you to remember that everyone does not have that same access. And that when you decide that you're going to take the social work exam, you are saying, I am going to serve, and hear me clearly, you are saying you will serve all people. All people. others talk about how the lazy blacks and lazy Hispanics don't deserve. I want you to know that you have an ethical responsibility to serve those people. I want you to know that when there are protests at the Capitol from the LGBTQIA community, you don't get to sit on your high horse and say, that doesn't involve me. It very much does. Free world says that an entire group of people must leave this country because of where they were originally born or where they came from, quote unquote, it is ethically your responsibility to stand in the gap. Yes. If you decide that you are going to be a social worker, you are saying that I will be an ally to each and every one who is fighting any type of injustice in this country. It is a commitment. Being a social worker is not a title. It is a responsibility, it is a commitment, and it is absolutely who you are. So if there was ever anything you had an opportunity to hear from Felicia Glass, Professor Glass, some of you call me Dr. Glass, see that FAAGC, that fellowship means that I've done the work. I don't need a PhD. You don't need an MSW. You don't need an LCSW. You don't need a BSW to understand that there is a need in this world for kindness, for humanity, for empathy, for compassion, and that it starts with you. So today, I invite you to move forward in challenging yourself to stand up, to stand tall, to speak up, and to be loud about justice and justice for all. I hope that you've enjoyed this program. I hope that you will find your way to be motivated, to be a standout, to never, ever be the smallest voice or the smallest presence in the room. When you walk in, you are the room. You are the room. There are people who say, listen, all my life, I've been 5'10" since I was 10. I command attention when I walk in a room. But now it's not because of my height. It's not because of my size. It's because I understand who I am and the power that I have within me. You have that same power to stand up, to be, and to be seen and to be heard. Use your power to change lives. Use your power to be the change. Understand that when you look yourself in the mirror each and every day, you get to come back to that same mirror and say, today, I changed the world for somebody. Today, I changed the world for somebody. And the day that you go home and you look in the mirror and you can't identify how you changed the world for somebody, it's time to retire. Have a good day.
And like, whatever, you can even take a picture. Some of it does ask you questions about the steakhouse, so you could choose to like kind of save it or bookmark it or however you want to do it. But I wanted to make it quick and easy for you to do. We want your feedback. We want your thoughts. This has been going on for years, and we want to make sure that we adapt with the times, which are ever changing. So my thoughts really quick at the end of it to take kind of what people said. And I like kind of one of the two things that I've heard people, not everybody's a social worker or going to be a social worker. Not everybody. And one, before everybody's just like just a social worker, no. You are just power and influence. You are who brought you here. All of the things that encapsulate you. When you think about your background and who you are and your worldviews, you see the world differently than everybody else. I mean, I don't know, I know I hear it in our classroom. I'm like, how many of you experience the fact that you look at something and go, oh, this is going to happen and this is going to happen? And people go, how do you know that? Because I'm educating myself to be a social worker. I see the world different. My viewpoint is valid. Don't let anybody tell you that what you experienced isn't valid. And what brought you here isn't valid. Because we hear that, right? We hear the story about the mall, and that's what Head Start is. No, sir, you're wrong. Let me educate you about what I know. I had that conversation at Christmas and this year with my brother-in-law. Anyway, and that's what you do, right? Ethically, you go, no, you're wrong. I know you think you know, but let me tell you my experience when I was trying to feed your nieces on SNAP benefits. Let me share that with you. So take what you learned today, make it into the elevator speech, so your voices, your experience, your worldview is heard this afternoon. Thank you for coming.